presented by Exquisite Timepieces. More about them in the description down below and later in the video. A couple of weeks ago, a viewer left a comment asking to do an HMoser video, and unfortunately I went back and looked to see who left that comment, but I couldn't find it. So if you're watching, this one's for you. Today we're looking at the HMoser Pioneer Perpetual Calendar MD. MD signifying month and date, and this is a very limited watch, having only been produced in a quantity of 50 total pieces. But that's not exactly a surprise. Moser only produces something on the order of about 1,500 watches per year. Now, trading for prices reaching and even exceeding $40,000, this might seem like a great deal of money for a stainless steel watch. But HMoser & Company is high horology. Moser is a brand with watches of outstanding quality, attention to detail and refinement, and a brand that should be mentioned in the same breath and context as brands like Lange or even FP Journe. So what makes this, and honestly all HMoser watches, so special? I guess it depends on who you ask, but for me it comes down to a pair of important and impressive things. Those things are dials and movements, and of course by extension, complications. Take this example, a Pioneer model timepiece with burgundy fume dial featuring small seconds and an up-down power reserve indicator, running the in-house manufacturer HMC 808 Perpetual Calendar movement, pushing a 168-hour power reserve, or 7 days for anyone that doesn't want to break out the calculator. These things are both as much works of art as they are horological marvels. But before we drill down on those highlights, a quick overview of the watch's other features and specifications. In terms of proportion, or size and scale, this is a watch with a case diameter of just under 43 millimeters. It has a wingspan measuring approximately 51 millimeters from lug tip to lug tip, and it has an overall thickness of about 15 millimeters, although a fair portion of that comes from the domed sapphire crystal. Finally, the strap attaches between the lugs at 22 millimeters in width. And speaking of that strap, crafted from alligator leather with modest padded bolstering and a lined underside with rubber to protect the black leather from moisture, this strap is absolutely outstanding. It's topped off with a Moser-signed stainless steel pin buckle with edge flares engraved with a coin edge matching that of the watch case, and it's a nice, but it's a subtle attention to detail. Now the watch case itself, also in stainless steel, it has a mix of brushed and polished surfaces, and like all Moser cases, features their unique style of inset and coin-edged engraved case flanks. And of course the case is topped off with a high-polished and domed bezel. Now on the opposing side of the watch case, you find the HMoser screw-down crown, which is slightly oversized and nicely knurled for ease of use and operation. The watch face, it's covered by a scratch-resistant domed sapphire crystal, and the watch offers 120 meters of water resistance. The hands and the chapter ring outboard of the dial feature an application of photoluminescent superluminova. And when it comes to the front-facing side of the watch, I gotta say it's the dial that steals the show, and it is quite a show. But before we look at that, and the amazing movement, a quick word about my video sponsor and my good friends providing this watch for the video. This video is presented in partnership with Exquisite Timepieces, located in Naples, Florida. Exquisite is an authorized dealer of dozens of watch brands, including Seiko and Grand Seiko, Omega, Oris, Blancpain, Breguet, and many more. Exquisite also has an amazing selection of pre-owned watches with new inventory coming in daily. So if you're looking for your next watch, check their website, exquisitetimepieces.com, or call their store at 239-227-2932, and let them know that you heard about them from Guy in the Just Bluefish channel. I can't recommend them enough. Now the burgundy red fume, or fade dial, has layers of gradation that drift from a lighter shade of red to a deep, rich burgundy, depending on your viewing angle and the available ambient light when you look at the dial. The sunburst effect of Moser dials in general, they're some of the best I've seen, and this is absolutely no exception. Now, other than those small lume plots on the outer flange of the dial, there's otherwise no hour markers or indices to insist in reading of the time. But when you're wearing a watch like this, the odds are pretty good that knowing the exact time, down to the minute, isn't exactly of the utmost importance. Speaking of wearing the watch, here's a shot of it on my wrist, which measures in at 6.5 inches in circumference. And yes, this is a pretty large watch, at least by my standards. Moser watches tend to be on the larger side, and it's probably my only criticism of their watches. That's of course subjective, I know, and for the right person, they will probably love the size. And considering the limited quantity, I'm sure Moser has no problems finding the right person for each and every watch they make. But back to the dial. Aside from the beautiful color and the sunburst effect, there's a couple of other details to note, that being the complications. Towards the 9-hour side of the dial, we have a simple power reserve indicator, and being as this is a hand-wind only timepiece, that's certainly handy to have. I enjoy power reserve indicators in general, but on an automatic winding watch, while it's useful, it's a little bit less necessary, especially if you keep the watch on a regular rotation. But on a mechanical hand-wind watch like this model, it's a smart complication to have, and I think that the layout and the positioning on the dial is really well thought out as well. Then we have the month and the date complication, and I can imagine that some people might have a knee-jerk reaction and point out that, of course, a day and date is much more useful than the month. But you have to remember, this is a perpetual calendar. A complication that almost dictates by its very nature that the month needs to be tracked as much as the day. And this perpetual calendar is actually sort of special in that you can set the month and the date forward, but you can also move it backwards and reverse as well. This is a really handy feature indeed, if you are setting the watch and you accidentally roll past the date you were aiming for, preventing you from having to go all the way around again. And you might be wondering, what about leap years? Well, on the rear of the watch case, we can see a leap year phase indicator set into the movement, and on the side of the case, a small pusher for advancing the leap year phase when necessary. So there's no need to worry about that extra day in February every few years. This watch has you covered. Other than that leap year indicator, this movement is really quite something. Now, running at just 18,000 vibrations per hour, it keeps time a little more like a vintage pocket watch than a modern high-beat movement. But don't let that fool you. This is a high-end, high horology timepiece. Obviously, the fit and finishing, the attention to detail, and the decoration of the movement, it's nice. That goes without saying. It's one of those watches that you might almost feel compelled to wear backwards on your wrist so that you can look down at it and enjoy the view of the movement whenever you want. But aside from the visual spectacle, it's also very capable. With 32 joules, 168 hours of power reserve, hand winding and hacking, and the other features I've already mentioned, yeah, it's nice. But once you factor in the dual mainspring barrels, the full balance bridge and the free sprung balance, the stabilized Breguet overcoil hairspring, and the 14-karat gold escapement, well, it's really a thing of beauty. And being a hand-finished and hand-decorated movement, it's one of those nods to how watchmaking was done before the advent of CNC machines and computerized manufacturing. And it's one of the reasons that HMoser is, as I said earlier, a brand that should be mentioned in the same vein as some of the other most well-respected high horology brands on the market. I truly hope you guys enjoyed having a look at this HMoser Pioneer Perpetual calendar with me. It's not often that you get a chance to see a watch that's limited to just 50 total pieces, let alone get hands-on access with it for a few days to make a video. So I have to thank my friends at Exquisite Timepieces again for providing this one for the video. I do really appreciate it, and I can't recommend them enough to you guys, whether you're looking for an HMoser or an Omega or a Grand Seiko or any of the other 50 watch brands they carry. So go check out their website or give them a call when you're looking to purchase your next watch.